Welcome to the Heroes of the World podcast quarantine edition. I am your host, Stu Pei. I am joined, as always, with the proprietors and owners of the Heroes World, your source for all things cool, John and Andre.
Howdy, folks.
Hello.
And, of course, joined with the Prince of Mischief himself, Rob Cadet.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Stuart.
Hello.
Andre.
Hello.
John.
What's up?
Okay.
What's up?
Oh, hello, 1997? Yes, we do have your friend here. Hang on.
Well, we're talking Spawn, which came out in what, 97? So
Yes, it did.
That was a great commercial back in the day.
We're old. Anyways, welcome to the Heroes of the World podcast. This is a podcast that we all talk about all things geek and pop culture and comic books, video games, all that jazz. These are the conversations we have in the store that you'd maybe randomly walk in on and sometimes join in. But again, these are the conversations we typically have. We're recording them and sharing them out with the internet just so you have something that brings you in and reminds you of your ye old comic book store. So this is the podcast. Today we're doing our continuing series of OG comic book movies, the trifecta, the Holy Trinity itself, the first Image comic book movie that came out in the theaters. That'd be 1997's Spawn, the movie. So we finished off first with
Brand new fresh copy for Rob.
Superman we started off with. Then we went with Howard the Duck. And now, ominously, we start off with Spawn. I don't know which.
We squeezed Crow in there, though, between Howard the Duck and Spawn.
That's not canon because that's not canon. So that's one of the weird off-canon episodes. But nonetheless, because the Crow, what comic series was that? Dark Horse?
Dark Horse.
No,
Indie publisher.
It was not Dark Horse.
It was indie publisher.
Something else.
Yeah. They're not part of the big three. Who cares? Carry on. So we'll hear about the big three.
You should care because it's an infinitely better movie than this.
Yes.
Well, again, so we're going to talk about that movie, go into full spoilers, and talk about everything about Spawn, so you don't have to.
23-year-old spoilers, everybody. So get ready.
Here we go. So some details about this movie, as we discussed before. It was released in the year of our Lord, 1997. August 1st was its initial release date. The cost of the movie at the time of production was $40 to $45 million. Today, that would reach out to be 65 to 70 million, and it shows. It's cheaper than a lot of Netflix movies at this standpoint. The box office return worldwide was 87.5 million. So that's how much it made back. So needless to say, it was not a giant commercial success. It just kind of made back what it was going.
And I'm sad to say that I actually contributed to that in theaters. So.
I did as well. I watched in the theater and
I never saw it. First time watching it.
Mistakes were made. Andre, did you watch in theater?
I did.
There we go. So, we're gonna poo all this movie a lot, but there's some respect to it as well. We'll throw, hopefully. It was directed by Mark Dipp, who, since the direction of this movie, not really done anything else since. So speaks. He's done a lot of animation films, and rewatching the movie, I can see why. There's a lot of weird cuts and a lot of weird things in this movie that I'm just going, okay, interesting. It was written by Alan B. McElroy, who didn't really do much afterwards. He did
fart in the wind, gone.
He wrote Wrong Turn, so the slasher horror movie, which with Elijah Dushku. So there's something like that. He's done a lot of TV shows, and now he's on Star Trek Discovery, Rob. So he's a staff writer on the TV show. So maybe we can hopefully see a Michael J. White cameo in that. Okay, let's go into this. I have first question to ask you guys. Would you recommend this movie to anyone in this world? Rob?
Yes.
Whoa.
John?
No, sorry. I'm sorry. I would not recommend this.
Andre?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So why, Rob?
Well, I think you need to have if you're going to debate and talk about movies regardless of the genre, but obviously we're talking about comic book movies here, you need to be able to see the shit with the good to be able to understand where it is on a spectrum. This is not the worst superhero movie at all, right? However, it's not great. Now, it is a product of its time, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but that's why I would recommend it. For a very short answer is that you need to be able to have an educated opinion on it, and you can only do that by seeing a full spectrum of movies.
John?
Yeah, I think like Rob said, it's a product of its time, and it's a time that wasn't good. Like when you read interviews, it's like they cast Michael J. White as Spawn. He is not the leading star on the credits. Like even when Rob bought that DVD, it says Spawn and it says John Leguizamo, and I think that's disrespectful. And then when you look at the history of them making the film, they've changed a lot of the characters, Terry Fitzgerald, some of the other characters, and there's a clip of Todd McFarlane saying the studio said there was too many black people in this movie, and we want more people to see it, so they changed it. And I think that's just wrong too as well. So I feel like I don't want to support a movie like this that does this. Like the first, like I'm sure a lot of people, like maybe Andre, went to see it because it was Michael J. White in a leading role, and like I can't imagine if they took something of like if Shang-Chi came out when I was a kid and it had one Asian guy and they toted someone else as the star who's maybe the villain who was a white guy, and then they changed all the other cast to
so Dragon Ball Z?
white Shaolin monks or something. Exactly, like that. I think that's not cool, right? So that's like the movie has some merit. Like you can see some stuff in the movie. There's some things that they achieve, like Spawn special effects and other things like that. And I don't know if I would say any of the performance were stellar, but I think the fact that Hollywood did that wants me to say I don't want nothing to do with this movie.
So way to make me feel bad for having to repurchase this movie. Thanks a lot, John.
Return it. I said return it.
On moral grounds. Amazon, why are you returning this product? Moral grounds.
Andre?
Yeah, I think if somebody likes the character of Spawn, I think they should watch it. But again, that it's a product of its time.
Yeah.
But also too, I think it's kind of important to see the difference in movie making from a property that is well known to a property that's relatively unknown, and then to kind of see definitely the difference. And I would have to use the word struggle because this is not very, very close to the comic, and I think that it shows how a creator kind of loses a little bit of control over his property. And I think if he had more control, it would have definitely been a better movie. But I think it's a way to see that McFarlane got this movie made and adapted it, but he got it made 5 years after Spawn came out. So that's huge. If you think about that, a brand new character gets a movie after 5 years. Nobody other than comic book people knew who this movie
with a big
was.
budget.
Yeah.
With a big budget. Yeah.
And also
Mid-budget.
The cast, you had Martin Sheen in it. The casting, was pretty big for its time. It wasn't like they just went and got, like literally nobody's. Like, so I think they did try, but again, like as Stu just said, the director and the writers are unknowns. So I think just watching it from that to say like, hey, this was a first effort from this fledgling creator, which was McFarlane, had the character for a while. But yeah, and I think if he does do another movie, you better believe you want to compare it to what the first one said. Yeah, look how far he's come after X amount of years.
I think to the point where both Rob and Andre mentioned is that you have to also think about the fact that there at that point, and Rob made that joke a few times, Meteor Man was one of the only African-American Black heroes. And to get something like this where the protagonist was a person of color is a big deal. So regardless of what kind of the whitewashing of certain areas, but the fact that at least the hero was still a Black man, although burned and disfigured and Deadpoolized, it's a unique kind of something that in 1997, like now everyone's like, oh, Black Panther, it makes sense. And Ava DuVernay is doing all these different things where Andre shared a post about doing more stuff about Black characters and heroes and Black Lightning. Like, this is something that was in 1997. Like, no one would have imagined that Spawn was going to be something that came out in the movie theater, not alone be a movie. So yeah, to your point, yes, they kind of had to do it, but we talk about this all the time. It's that, you know, producers and people that make and the, you know, the people that pay for movies, you know, are very particular, because in European markets or markets around the world, if it's a no one, they can't sell it. It's why Nicolas Cage, as the example I said before the pod, is like he makes movies nonstop because some random person in Bangladesh or in Jakarta know Nicolas Cage, and they're like, can do it. And the same thing will happen with Gods of Egypt. You know, like one of the greatest directors of time wanted to make a movie. He couldn't get it done until he cast Christian Bale in it. It's like, okay, now I can get the movie done because people know Christian Bale. So it's part of indicative of the time frame of what it is to, you have to make concessions to get a movie done. But that's not the problem with this movie, as to Andre and Rob's point. There's just so many issues along the way. Let's go quickly as to the roster of Image movies. There have been many an Image movie. Is this the worst Image movie out of all of them? I have a list of Spawn, Bulletproof Monk, Mystery Men, Wanted, I Kill Giants. These are all Image titles. Which is Spawn the worst of all of them?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes. Do you need me to expand, or are we
Yes,
good with
please.
that?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh, you need me to expand?
Yeah, yes, please, yeah.
Well, because Mystery Men is funny, and it is exactly what it sells itself as being. One of my problems with this movie, and I'm just gonna hit it out, is the marketing. They marketed a movie of a guy in a costume with a cape, like Doctor Strange. This cape never shows up in the movie. The poster where you see the half moon face of Spawn is an amazing poster for marketing. It was phenomenal. That character, it does not appear in the movie. So yeah, I think, you know, Bulletproof Monk is for me. I know one of us is a big fan of the movie. For me, it's a bit of a throwaway movie, but this is the worst of the worst because you marketed it as one thing and you didn't deliver.
Bait and switch. John?
I've only seen Bulletproof Monk on your list here, so I
You
don't know
haven't
if you
seen
want me to
Wanted?
compare it.
Wanted?
Oh, I did. You know, I did see Wanted. Yeah, definitely.
John,
I don't
female
remember
John
much
Boyd?
about Bulletproof Monk, so I want to say it was worse than this, maybe. Because yeah, I don't know.
Said you liked Bulletproof Monk. What are you talking about?
I never said I like Bulletproof. I said I own it on DVD because it starred Chow Yun-fat, and I'm Asian, so I bought it for the hell of it. You know, I also own his other deluge of, you know, Replacement Killers and everything else that he produced over here. I even own a copy of Tuxedo that I've never watched, but you know, I don't think
Jackie Chan.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I also bought a copy of Tuxedo because it says Jackie Chan, and I never watched it. I just bought it to support. But yeah, I don't remember anything of Bulletproof Monk, so I can't really make a fair assessment.
Wanted, Angelina Jolie as your
I will say Wanted was better than this, at least. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Andre?
No, not the worst. I would say Wanted is the worst Image movie.
Oh, please do share.
Any movie where you expect me to believe that by flicking your wrist you can spin bullets, yeah, I'm out. That movie was garbage.
Kinetic energy.
Yeah, it was garbage.
Well,
Angelina couldn't save that. I think, was it Morgan? Who else
Morgan
was in it?
Freeman. Yeah,
Morgan Freeman. Yeah, no. I would watch
Professor
this.
X.
I would watch this movie way over that. And also that movie was insulting to the fans and the readers as well. At the end of the movie, he's like, "Oh, what do you do with your life? You're sitting here reading this comic book. Go do something." And
I think that's in the comic. I don't think they do that in the movie.
So yeah, that movie gets the big double fingers from me, and I'd watch Spawn.
But it looked cool, whereas this didn't.
Okay, let's talk about that. Like I said, this movie's 20-something years old. Wanted was again. I would take that one scene in this movie where Spawn gets the guns and he's got the things, because that looked like it was right out of the comic. So they did some stuff in this movie. Anyways, my preference. I like this movie over Wanted. So no.
Wanted was released in June 12th, 2008. It was a budget of $75 million. It made $341 million. So yeah, it made a lot of money, but that's maybe because of Angelina Jolie, James McAvoy, and but you know, a bunch of actors in it. So yeah, there's that. Okay. So in terms of whew,
Where do you start, Stu?
is this the worst movie of all the worst movies that for John and Andre and Rob? Is this the worst movie ever made? Like, is it?
What?
Is it?
No.
I just want to ask the question. It's
No,
bad.
Howard the
It's
Duck.
worse.
That was 2 weeks ago. What are you talking about?
Is it worse than Fantastic Four?
The Josh Trank one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, I'm going to tell you something. And this is, I don't know if we were going to get into this or not. In the 90s, and I'm not going to lay all the blame on this movie, but in the 90s, the late 90s, with the advent or explosion of computer effects, you saw it with Jurassic Park and this and that, all of these studios started relying on computer effects as opposed to practical effects. And this is the problem. One of the problems with this movie is that they relied, They relied so heavily on computer effects. The shot, I understand in the comic that Spawn's cape is its own entity, much like how Doctor Strange was in Infinity War. But they relied so heavily on special effects for this cape that it actually took away from what you were seeing. I think that, you know, the transition between Violator, the clown, to the Violator, you know, again, it was a product of its special effects, but I think that the director just wanted to say he threw all of that money into the special effects without really giving enough service to the practical aspect of the film. And for that reason, it tipped the balance. It tipped the balance of what this movie should have been. And the special effects, I honestly tried to remember whether or not I enjoyed it when it was in theater. I saw it twice. And the reason being is the first time I was high, like super high. So I don't remember much of the movie when I first saw it because I was so stoned. And the second time I watched it, I remember thinking to myself, why does it look like PS1 graphics? Like, I can't remember the name of the devil at the end, but it was
Malvolja.
Yeah, Malvolja. Yeah, I was like, wow, this is very like PS1 graphics. Like, what am I looking at here, right? So even then I was like, it took me away from what I was watching. So for me, the special effects, I get that it was at a time you relied too heavily. You were throwing your wad at the screen. Look at all this we can do. And sorry, it made the movie worse. I would have liked to have seen a more practical.
But here's
effect.
the thing. I think Andre touched on it before about, you know, the character and Spawn and how it didn't really touch kind of the comic form. But Fantastic Four, we've discussed this numerous times. It had better special effects. It had better cinematography. It looked better. It was made in the 2010-ish, but it's a worse movie because I think it does a real poor job of honoring the characters. Sorry,
are you talking about the Josh Trank one?
The Josh Trank one is somehow worse
2015
than this one. Although this is a train wreck, that's an even bigger train wreck.
Well, okay, but you know what? Listen, John touched on The Crow, and if you watched Spawn, for those who haven't seen it, you probably should. A lot of it takes place. It's backlot. It's not out there. Aside from the exterior scenes of the house, it's all in a backlot, and it's raining all the time, and this and that. And if you listen to our episode last week of The Crow, when John and I were talking about it with Josh and Howard, I mean that is a movie that was filmed completely on stage in a backlot, and yet it was so much more evoking in terms of what it was, its feeling and what it was trying to get across, as opposed to this one. This tried to do the exact same thing The Crow did 3 years earlier and failed. And how it was.
If you follow, like I follow a lot of Michael J. White stuff, he does a lot of interviews. He does talk about this movie in depth, and he says he saw an earlier cut before the director producer went crazy with all these CG stuff, and he said it was actually a much more exploring into the character. Like Al Simmons, I think, is actually a pretty cool character. He's like this government murderer, kind of like no conscience type guy, and then he kind of does this transition to Spawn. Andre would probably be able to speak about it more. But he says, like, yeah, the early cut was focused more on story, and he actually really liked how that was going. And then the director would be like, oh, you know, I got this CG thing of this thing coming out of your stomach, and he was like, why, right? That type of thing, like, why? You had something good going on. So yeah, it's like they just got and I guess you have to transport yourself back into that time, and I guess they thought CG was the future. So it's hard to really blame them for that. But like when you watch something like The Crow, or even I'm trying to think of what else came out around that time, even the Batman 89 or whatever. Like they had a like something that they could have, focused more on. They just got too caught up in the CG. The Violator I thought looked decent, but the Malbolgia stuff looked bad. But it just kind of like you really wonder what could have been if that earlier cut exists. It probably doesn't. It was probably just mostly like the storyline.
Outside of bad CGI, John, is this the worst movie? Now that not to spoil what you guys would it even get out of the first round in your rankings?
No, it's definitely not. It's not as insulting as something like that Fantastic Four or as Dark Phoenix and things like that. Like it just
or Apocalypse.
Yeah. They just went in like a wrong direction where they should have established the character. Like I feel like they should have had Al Simmons. Like, what, when those movies are like you have that main character and then Spawn or Batman doesn't show up till like the last quarter. I think they could have explored the Michael J. White, and if they wanted to do, like Andre said, all the machine gun scenes and stuff like that. Imagine if that was just Michael J. White in Spec Ops gear and stuff like that, and they could have explored that and the whole thing with his relationship with his wife. Like you don't really feel that his wife meant everything to him.
I think to your point, John, and before I get to Andre, because I'm going to ask him a follow-up question. I feel like if it was made today, it would be like that. And we would complain that there's not enough Spawn. It's like, why are you setting up for another movie? It would be like a precursor to a trilogy. Be like, let Michael J. White or Jamie Foxx is barely Spawn in this movie for the last 10 minutes. I wanted more Spawn. So I feel like it could go either way. Like it kind of did its best to give us Spawn as fast as possible. But it didn't really
give you Spawn. Like it gave you like a Spawn suit.
Yeah.
And the really poor prosthetics. Like poor Michael J. White had to wear that, and he's like a very talented individual. Like I think he gets to do 2 spin kicks in the movie, like to show off his talents. He gets one at the beginning, and then he gets one like towards the end as Spawn. And you're kind of like you hire this guy who I feel like he like definitely like could have embodied the part of this trained assassin character, right? And
don't worry, he gets a chance as
just huge disservice to.
So this is
just huge disservice to bringing him on and like his talents. Like I don't know.
So to your point, John, I think the next movie is going to be a trilogy anyway. So the Spawn universe. So don't worry about you having more time as Al Simmons, because Jamie Foxx ain't gonna make that face. He ain't gonna put on prosthetics. He's gonna be Jamie Foxx for a long time. He's gonna say, I don't want to put that crap on.
You're not going to see that movie.
Once. I'm good. I'm not going to makeup chair for 4 hours.
You're not going to see it. They're not making it. It's not happening.
So. Blumhouse. It'll happen eventually. They have a good track record. So in your opinion, not the worst, right, John?
No, definitely not. No.
Andre, worst?
No, definitely not. I think sometimes why we talk about things being really bad is because the source material is really good, and they end up throwing that out for the director's vision and stuff. And it just gets worse when you know more and more about that source material. I think that this was an honest effort at the time to make this movie. And again, I don't think McFarlane, as a 5-year-old property, had the control to make this what it was. And an actor like John saying, Michael J. White, maybe didn't have the clout to say, hey, we should really be focusing on something else. But again, you look at these other modern movies that just throw the characters under the bus, like every one of those Fantastic Four movies. I would say the last 3 X-Men movies, you know what I mean? Like they're even X3, like they just do such a disservice to the potential of the source material. Like this movie, I think if you cut this movie and redid the special effects, because it's probably cheap as hell, this movie you could re-release this particular movie. Yeah. Right? Like the Malbolgia stuff and the stuff in Hell was awful. But like I said, you could redo that with Unreal Engine and it cost you nothing. And all of a sudden you'd be like, hey, this ain't, it's not bad. Again, you got to look at it for the time and who was making it too, right? So yeah, definitely not the worst movie. I own it on DVD. Like I bought this thing, but I bought it day one when it came out, and stuff. So yeah,
you didn't buy it yesterday.
So I actually owned it previously. There's a whole bunch of movies that are gone. So I think I either donated them or they got thrown out or whatever. But I did actually own this because I did find it. You know what? There are worse ways to spend a rainy Saturday afternoon watching something. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So this is always kind of good for one of those. So I did own it. I had to rebuy it because I don't know where it went.
Again, first time seeing it for me.
So the John Wick bar for fighting excellence. This movie came out in '97. It's an action movie. I want you to kind of rate, compare it to the other action movies that came out in 1997, where it falls in line. So The Fifth Element, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and let's say Batman and Robin. Those are all the peer group of action. Oh, on Face Off.
Oh, that wins.
John's like, yeah. So think about it. Like, it's one thing to talk about the movies of its peers. All those movies were released at the same time, and I look at the action sequences of this movie compared to like Face Off, The Fifth Element, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and let's say gun movies. That Con Air had gun movies, and Con Air also came out in 1997. Is it at all good at anything, Rob?
Is it good at anything? No, and I'll tell you why.
Because compared to like better gunfighting, like there's Con Air, Face Off. Every movie.
No, action wise, it's not. The crashing through the skylight scene was an homage to '89 Batman, which in itself was derivative. They did it in the '97 Batman and Robin, and that was done much better. Again, I think it's because it's they relied on the special effects of this ridiculous looking cape. So the action scenes with the guns. I mean, I didn't buy Priest, with her, double machine guns doing the flip down, the way she landed. You could tell she was on wires. Like, it just, no, this director, listen, man, this is a guy who he got the shot, he got his budget, he got to do it, and good for him. But it was outside of, I think, of his wheelhouse. It was not. He's not an action director. His cinematographer was not an action cinematographer. Like, I just don't think that if, as an action movie, this does not hold up. The action is poor. John just said you have Michael Jai White, who is at that point was a known martial artist, and he only does 2 martial arts moves. One, the kicking the crap out of the future president of the United States. So, like, let's call it what it is. You rely on an action star to do nothing. When Liam Neeson is more of an action star 20 years later, then there's a problem, right? And he was in his 60s. So,
John?
Yeah, I think they're probably on the cutting room floor. There might be some, like very good scenes with Michael Jai White, and he got a couple opportunities to shine. But like, especially if you're going to put something like Con Air in this list, you're not going to be able to.
Was 1997, like Starship Troopers was 1997, Double Team.
You can't. They just got too caught up in the. They just got too caught up in the special effects. Like, there's one scene where he turns into a pillar on the side of a building, and then they proceed to catch him immediately after. I'm like, what was the point of this scene other than to show off that you can have him transform into a pillar? Like, they were just focused in the wrong. They definitely could have made this like an amazing action. They could have gone kind of like an 80s feel. Like, they could have done so many things with it, but they just got too caught up in the special effects.
Thoughts?
Yeah. I don't even know where you land this movie action wise, because it's almost not an action movie. Like, the action isn't there.
It doesn't know what it is.
I think
Michael Jai White gets to do a flip with the machine guns, and he's firing into nothingness.
I think, to your point, Rob, you talked before, is that it's trying its footing in so many different. It's a horror movie, it's an action movie, it's a drama. It's like, it's kind of all over the place, and it succeeds at nothing. It tries hard to do a lot of multiple things, and unfortunately, even if it just went into the skid like Double Impact, like, I saw Dennis Rodman do more action sequences than Michael Jai White. So it's your
Double Team
with Van Damme. Like, you're like, oh, that.
I own that on Laserdisc.
No surprise. So here's the hardest question for you, Rob. What was the best moment in Spawn?
There is one scene that's 22 minutes into the movie where Spawn is on top of the building, and the cape is billowing out, and it's got to be about 60 feet long. And he does have the collar popped, right? Exhibit came by and he popped his collar. And and so that one scene is amazing looking, because that was kind of like taken out of the, like, the comics. It was the typical, but they put that at 22 minutes into the movie, when that should have been the end, is what usually you would see at the very end of the movie, right? Was the camera pans up the skyscraper a la 89 Batman. Instead, they had him hunched over like Daredevil on a cross with the cape was now 120 feet, swirling, like looking like Jello. So that one scene at 22 minutes in was probably the best scene of the entire movie.
John?
Yeah, the cape stuff was hot. I will shout out one scene where
mess.
where Terry walks into the room and who Martin Sheen is like, "You've met Agent Priest before," and then it's just kind of like introduced, and she's like wearing this black clad leather, and you're just kind of like, "Oh yeah, Agent Priest. Yeah, I know her. I'm familiar with her." But my only real shout out is going to go to John Leguizamo, who really went like all in for this. Like he was definitely improvising all that stuff. There's one scene where he eats a piece of pizza covered in maggots.
Yeah.
And he ate that. Well, he didn't swallow it, but he ate a piece of pizza with a bunch of maggots on it.
That wasn't like some type like
no, he had to do it. They didn't have money for it. They didn't have any more money. So he ate a slice of, like, he didn't swallow, he probably spit it out right after, but he ate maggots on a piece of pizza. So
maggots aren't like
gross. Right, maggots for lunch on
I ain't gonna do that
but Tuesday. I'll bring them in. But no, I have to give it
to be fair. Andre would eat guff if he could. Like, he would just be there, like, doing his Klingon thing. It's like, oh,
I would have been like, is this scene really necessary? But he did it.
No, I agree with you, John. Though, with John Leguizamo did it, especially because he just came off of Super Mario Brothers, so he did a good job.
He committed. Right. Clown was one of the better elements, and I feel it was a little bit more true to the comic.
Yeah.
The character, like the wackiness, like his head falls off, and he's just doing silly stuff. He puts on the cheerleader outfit and acts like an idiot. Like I feel like that was one of the core things that kind of like they kind of actually kept from the comic. I don't know if your next question, Stu, is going to be like, what were some of the craziest lines that he had in the movie?
We're gonna get there.
Yeah. All right. I'll leave.
We're gonna get to Andre. Andre, what's the best part of this movie?
You know what?
Don't say the ending.
I think
the credits.
I think
Go.
The voiceover by Cogliostro, I think, was probably the best part, and I think they should have leaned more heavily into that. Like, they gave you a little bit at the beginning.
They should put him in earlier, right?
But if they had done kind of like this montage about the whole Holy War and all of that, and even did a flashback of him and stuff like that, because it did work, but it was almost like. It's almost like this movie needs like that Blade Runner director's cut. Like, give us more of that overview, because it didn't come across and stuff like that, and whatnot. And I know he was in the comic and stuff, but I don't think they leaned heavily enough, on it. Like, I think they should have either gone one of two ways: either you lean extremely heavily on it, or just take it all out, and then you have to have somebody else explain what the hell's going on, right?
That's a great point, Andre. To your point, like, to add to that, you could see the best example of that is the Lord of the Rings in the beginning, when Cate Blanchett's like, let me talk, like, it goes the whole thing about the ring, and you're like, oh, that's what's happening. And if they did that on a montage with Spawn, they'd probably do that in the next movie, but back then it would have been unthinkable. But back then, if they did, that'd be awesome, because there was just like these weird pictures of like Martin Sheen with fire happening, and you're like, bad people. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? This looks terrible. But I think that, even to your point, I don't think the budgetary, the restraints stopped it from getting there, because it's one of the notes that happened in Thor: The Dark World. Although it's not the best Thor movie, you can see they added that whole portion with the Dark Elves. That whole beginning scene is all CGI. Like, it's just like it's like a video game cutscene. Like, they added that stuff in because they're like, oh, we need more like a Malachite, because like this whole thing doesn't make sense. So Boar, who's like doing stuff, if you watch closely, is a CGI like rendering, and they're all fighting CGI in the background, because they're like, we need something to make this movie make sense, because no one cares about Malachite, and you need to show them sacrificing the ships and all this stuff, because
I have seen the beginning of this movie then. Yeah, I didn't know that was Thor.
By saying it, you're like, oh, it doesn't make sense. Like, to your point, Andre, like, saying it is one thing, but showing like, oh, the Dark Elves, like, and then all of a sudden you see them all fight, and you see Boar, and you're like, oh yeah, this is like a PS5 cutscene. Like this is essentially what it is. So a PS4 cutscene. So yeah, I think it's an excellent point, Andre. So let's jump to the other side. Is the worst part of this movie, Rob? What is the worst? There's many moments to choose from. What is the worst part of this movie?
The whole near the end when he's down in hell, and he's facing off. He's standing in front of a green screen, and he's got his horrible green whatever flying out of him, and he's
nectoplasm, you mean?
Well, but it looks so bad, and he's obliterating the other spawns who are the exact same costume. It was just they just filmed the guy like 200 times.
Don't use your powers because you'll die. By the way, murder all these spawns.
To be fair, only the general gets the red cape. The rest of them are just regular. It's like it's like in Star Wars. The stormtrooper with the like fluorescent orange patch on the side is the captain. Everyone else, you get the same uniform.
All right, whatever. Matters is not. I mean, it was. I
want to see the behind the scenes where they're like, look like you're getting electrocuted, and the stun guys are like,
well, it was just a lot of cuts like this.
You're assuming there's more than one. I think it's just one guy. Over and over. And
200 times. Yeah. So for me, like that was not climactic whatsoever. It was atrocious. It looked horrible. It served no. There was no. You weren't. It had no weight. You weren't there going, oh, he's fighting the forces of hell. No, he's not. He's standing there just looking around because he can't turn his neck, and his necroplasm is flying everywhere. And it looked worse. And it looked worse than the movie that came out 13 years prior, which is Ghostbusters, in terms of the streams crossing. Like that was a much better look, flying around. So for me, that ending sucked balls.
John?
There's a scene where Priest goes to kick Michael J. White in the nuts.
Yeah.
And these things come out and stab her in the foot like that. I think that's got to be the worst, because that really shows you what they spent their money on in the movie. You're like, you chose to do this instead of giving Michael J. White more time and giving more story. You chose to do a crotch block animated sequence. Like, why? Like that's definitely, I'd say that's the worst scene for me.
Andre?
I didn't like a lot of the scenes in the alleyway. I don't think they came across as like, because I know the alley,
and that was a big part of the book.
Big part of the book, but it just didn't come across like with the little kid and his father. Like, I get what they were trying to do.
That's my dad.
It just didn't work, unfortunately.
That's the kid from Kindergarten Cop, right?
Yeah. What are you doing throwing away good food?
To be fair, the Lawrence Fishburne and John Wick does a better job of like being the underworld boss of the hobo people than all the hobos in this movie. Like even the TikTok man himself, Jason Mantzoukas, looks more disheveled than everyone else in this alleged hobo town. I'm like, everyone in the hobo town kind of looks clean, like a little bit of soot on their face, but they don't look dirty. I'm like, are you guys really hobos? I don't know what's going on. I don't know if you're the street people, but nonetheless. So
is the alley worse than the cemetery that had Dave Navarro and freaking Seth Green in it? Like that was pretty bad too. That was Dave Navarro, right, Rob?
I think it was. Yeah.
That was pretty rough. Michael J. White, is this his best performance, best movie? Is this the best of Michael J. White, Rob?
I don't know.
Can you name another Michael J. White movie?
Yes. Sudden Death 2.
You didn't watch it yet. Get out of town.
I actually can't think of another movie he was in that. I mean, I'm sure I would have seen it. The only thing I can think of, you referenced Golden Tiger from the Arrowverse earlier. Bronze Tiger, sorry. So that might just be. I can't think of another movie that I would have watched.
Gamble in Dark Knight.
Oh, right. Yes. You're very okay. Good. Yeah. So that might've been his best work. I mean, I think unfortunately, listen, is this guy on par with some of the other action movie stars of the 90s acting wise? Probably not, but he could have got there with maybe some good movies. I think this kind of derailed him a little bit into the B genre, the straight to video. I mean, John and I worked at video stores. We would see tons of these movies coming in every couple of weeks, these straight to DVD or VHS movies.
Yeah.
So sorry, that sucks for him, right?
John?
Yeah, I can go on for like 10 minutes about this. A big Michael J. White fan.
Okay.
His probably best performance was probably when he played Mike Tyson. I don't know if it counts though, because it's a TV movie. He actually got to really like kind of sink in there, and he hung out with Mike Tyson and stuff like that. But I would say my favorite movie of his, and this is a good point. Rob says that he's become this kind of B movie level guy, but if you watch his interviews, that's exactly where he's aiming. He's like, I go here, I get paid to do these. It has an international market. I don't have to fall victim to the same thing with Spawn. Like, I don't know what type of promises he was made to kind of come on that movie, but he is able to make movies that he likes. He is able to perform in them. They go overseas to Russia and stuff like that, and they do money, and he gets paid for them, and he enjoys that, and that's his lane. He likes staying there. Like, if you watch his interviews, he loves doing that. But my most favorite of his is one called Blood and Bone, which was really good fights. So if you like watching martial arts movies, I would definitely check that one out.
Andre?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say this is his best one. Like, we don't even get to see the guy. He doesn't even really get to act. Like, he tries. Like, there's that scene where he's talking to Cyan and he's trying, but again, he's in the suit and he's in the ugly stuff.
Hard,
so I don't think so. But was he not in that Mortal Kombat webisode things?
Yes, he was.
He was in those YouTube, and he was awesome.
Was good in that. Like, I really liked him in that. I was hoping that something would spin out of that. So yeah, I think that this is one of those things that, unfortunately, because they don't use his martial arts, they don't use his face. It's almost like you could replace him in this particular movie, and it doesn't mean anything. Right?
Huge disservice to him. Yeah.
I'm glad that no one said the best movie of his career, which I own on Blu-ray. It's called Black Dynamite. Rob, you need to get this movie immediately. Black Dynamite is a movie I watch every year. I love it to death. It is Michael J. White. It's basically a play on blaxploitation movies. It's all the shtick in it, and he is fantastic in it. He produces it. He kind of goes into it, and there's a couple scenes where that are just amazing and perfect. And if you enjoy those blaxploitation movies, this is a shtick on.
It's funny. They'll be like mics hanging in the shot, and everyone will like look at them and leave it in. It's funny. Yeah.
There's a scene in the diner where it's Preacher from Serenity. He does this like Shakespearean soliloquy, like whole dialogue, and then they just go through it, and they all look at each other and just carry on, because most of those blaxploitation actors were classically trained. They just were doing them because they're getting paid. So it's a perfect movie. Rob, you can't watch it with Noah. It's very inappropriate.
No, you know what? I remember, and I actually had added this to my list on Netflix a couple years ago, and I never got around to watching it. And you reminded me of that, so I actually just took a look, and it's only streaming in Canada on the CTV app right now. So I'm gonna give it a go this week for sure.
It's great. The first 10 minutes, there's a lot of nudity, so you're already on board, Rob. So
yes,
it's great.
Done. Sold. One ticket, please.
He gets out of bed with two naked women, and you're like, I'm on board.
Two tickets, please.
So that is the movie, and it's fantastic. Outside of that, and if you enjoy a movie that really understands the blaxploitation and goes into it, like there's a couple scenes where the car stops, but they don't put it on parking brake, and continues to move, and the actor turns around and tries to stop the car. Anyways, it's fantastic.
So what you're saying is they didn't lock the car up and allow things to happen?
They didn't use the parking brake. They stopped the car and let the parking brake.
That might be considered bad riding by some.
But in Blood and Bone, he fights Kimbo Slice.
Oh God, yes, not the same. Yeah, well, I think the blaxploitation, it's the purpose of it is the goofiness and it's on purpose.
Yeah.
John Leguizamo, is this the best movie that he's ever been in? Rob?
Oh,
it's his best performance.
No, not
What's
at all.
What's his best movie? Is it Luigi Mario and Mario
Yeah, no, that was so bad. This is better than that. Let's put it that way. No, man, you know what? Actually, I think John Leguizamo is actually he's a good actor. He's got some serious acting chops. He's been in a lot of even dramatic movies, and I'm actually coming at a loss. He's a Broadway, he's a theater artist as well, so he's been in a lot of things. I actually really like him in John Wick, the first John Wick movie, to be honest with you. I can't think
and
of.
it's 5 minutes in that movie. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you don't listen, man. Judi Dench won an Oscar for being in a scene for 3.5 minutes. So what do you need? You know, you don't need to, to be.
So did Sir Anthony Hopkins. So carry on. All right.
He was good in Romeo and Juliet. I mean, there's a whole bunch in there, right? I mean,
I have my movie that
I think it was William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. They called that movie.
yes, that's correct. With DiCaprio. John, what's the movie?
I do like his John Wick character, and I did really like him in Romeo and Juliet. But I think this is one of his, like, he gave like 150%. Like, he really wanted to make this work. Like the stuff that he did. Like, I don't know if you want me to shout his line. Like, he had like all these funny little lines, and some of them were like, "Whew!" I'm surprised this guy. Like, at one point he says, "I'm going to go play pin the tail on the Wanda," and I'm like,
yeah,
"Ooh, this is crazy."
Yeah.
The stuff that he does in this movie. So I think he actually did give a pretty good performance in it.
But I think, to your point, John, because of that performance, it screwed up the movie, because I don't know what the movie is. It's like, you're funny but not funny, you're action but not action. Like, I would have preferred that he was a little more.
I think he was the
sinister,
character in the movie.
but
He was the most true to the comic. Like,
yes,
that character was the snippet of what if they went all in for actual comic adaptation. Like, he was the closest.
Yeah.
Andre?
Yeah, he was the best part of the movie. Like, straight up, like in the Spawn comic, like, I never liked the clown. I always thought it was, man, Spawn should be able to rip this guy in half and whatever. But as Violator, they are toe to toe. But John Leguizamo owns the role. Like, just in every scene he's in, he owns it. Like, and it was, while it might not be exactly how you read the comic and heard it, it's how you hear it now, right? And that scene where he was the cheerleader, the scene where he was at the house and his head deflates and he blows up his thumb and stuff like that. Like I'm sure he probably even, like John said, ad-libbed it or told them what to do. Yeah. And I think this is his most imaginative role. Like, sure, it doesn't look like him, but I don't think he owns the screen like he owns the screen in this movie. Like, any other film he's in, he's on the screen, but it's not his.
Yeah. Yep.
This is his. Like, you know what I mean? Like straight up, right? So, like even when he goes and he gets Spawn, he says something like, "Oh, I don't want to drop my barbecue" or something, and he carries Spawn away. And I'm like, yo, it's just it's great.
And he's like, "I like my barbecue with something else." He says something else that goes with barbecue, it was
good, So
I think, for me, he is the best part of the movie. And to your point, Andre, you're right. It's the thing he's the first title of the movie, and the pest is good. But no, the movie is.
I know he's going to say.
No, what's the movie you think I'm going to say?
Carlito's Way.
No. I liked him in Moulin Rouge, but it's like a 5-minute interlude. To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, is
Wesley
the movie
Snipes.
that he is fantastic in. Him, Patrick Swayze, and Wesley Snipes.
Right. Yeah.
All in drag, just going balls to the wall. It is an incredible, ridiculous movie. Not the best, but just them going for it. It's like, it's just, again, a movie in 1995 where 3 men are like macho men are dressed up in drag doing their thing. It's a thing. Before we finish off, I just want to say that I'm just thankful that this movie didn't derail, as Rob mentioned, our future president, President Bartlett, because 2 years later he was on the West Wing. So I'm just glad that this isn't like
he really hammed it up for this part, eh?
Because Andre and I would be very sad if that was the case. No West Wing.
Did you guys notice the Linefield gun that he was holding at the end? It was like a big like a disc. I'm like, what the hell? Was that to stick it to Rob? That's funny.
Although I'm sure if they had the money, if the West Wing was made now. And I don't know, I think maybe Michael Douglas would have maybe done like 8 episodes or 12 episodes a year, a la, a streaming show, if it wasn't like a network 22 episodes, because I think that now it's more acceptable, because him and the American president was fantastic, but I don't think at that point he would do TV. I think it's a little too low, but we're lucky we got President Bartlett.
Martin Sheen, I think would did a better job though, but it gets because it's longer, right?
Yeah, but it's just, I think Martin Sheen, had the stoic nature. Like, even when he's AJ, like, he's very much like Mr. President. Like, he had a cadence to him, And you could see why Michael Douglas hits some big things, American president. Like, you can see why he's a very likable and why he was voted president, because he's a likable person, not maybe the most competent. But yeah, that's a whole different story. Nonetheless, thank you so much for listening to us talk gobbledygook about this movie called Spawn. The 3 of 4 recommend you watching this movie, so I'm on board just saying watch the movie. I think it has a place. If you want to, appreciate Black Panther for what it is, you should watch this one because we've gotten so far since then, or Meteor Man as well. So, nonetheless, comment below. Let us know your thoughts on Meteor Man. Let us know your thoughts on Spawn. On all the things below in the comments. Let us know if we're right or wrong, and let us know your favorite moment in the movie. John, Andre, where can people find you on the internets?
Yeah, so on our social media, the Instagram and Facebook, Heroes World Online, most active there. Send us messages there, we'll get them, no problem. If you're watching on YouTube, Heroes World Online as well, give us a subscribe and a like. And then also on the podcast on Spotify and iTunes, look up Heroes World Podcast. I'll probably put the link in the bottom of the YouTube if you're not already listening. We drop those episodes every Wednesday morning, and we upload the older episodes, and we also add the Sidekicks Show, which Rob's probably going to mention. But yeah, any way you want to send us a message, we'll usually get it.
Andre?
Yeah, I'm in the store. The store is conveniently located in Markham, 8601 Warden Avenue. Lots of parking, lots of amenities in the plaza. If you need to do your grocery shopping, you can come by there, and then come by the store and pick up something fun for yourself and your family. Any way you want to shop, you're still allowed to come in. We're not in the lockdown. We can arrange curbside pickup, and we can also arrange delivery for you.
Yes, if you want to buy stuff online, it's sales@heroesworld@gmail.com. Please go out, support your local store, buy anything you can, whether it's an action figure like that's, or it's a
comic book series for Spawn is really hot right now.
Or comic books, whatever it is, please support your local store. And by all means, let's not neglect the fact that although Todd McFarlane is not the best at many things, he knows how to make a toy and he knows how to make a superhero, because Spawn looks awesome. He is a cool looking dude.
Not in this movie.
But the comic itself, like, he knows how to draw and knows how to make it good, and he looks hella cool.
But if he makes a figure of that movie costume, though, that would look pretty hot.
Yeah, it looks good. Rob?
Well, yeah, you can find me on online on the Instagram and Twitter at Rob Gadet. You can also find, as John was alluding to, he and I are live on the HWP Sidekicks Show every Monday at 8. We are live. We are currently running down the worst comic book movies out there. John is really enjoying.
Not on the list.
It's not. John is really enjoying taking his time and watching all of these movies to their completion each and every week. So I want to thank everybody.
I think I have to eject soon. I don't know if I'm taking any more of this.
Shut up. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Perfect. So again, please go out, support your local store. The big box stores are going to be fine. Help the little guys out in any way you can. Holidays are coming up, so go buy some gifts for them, board games, social distance D&D books. John and Andre have them at the store. They have model kits, so if you're alone and you want to do that, including perfect editions and whatnot, you can buy some Gundams and whatever you need and back issues. And please go by and do what you can. Anything and everything is a help. And again, please feel free to comment below. We will always comment back to you and share. So thank you again for joining us today on Spawn, and we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Peace out.
Thanks, dude.
See you guys.